Thank you, Tony. Brian, congratulations.
Welcome.
So I got to get on him right from the start. So he calls me up a couple days ago. He says, listen, when we go on stage, I'm going to wear my Jordans. And I was like, cool. I'll wear my Jordans too. I got Jordans on and he doesn't have his Jordans on. True story.
It is true. So the background is I had them on a few hours ago. And I got a little feedback from my family saying, Dad, you are not as cool as Martin. Take those off. So you got to listen and learn. Got to be agile.
Got to shift, got to pivot. A few thank yous before we get started. I want to recognize Tony. Thank you, Tony, for your leadership of the Anderson School and this night. I also want to thank the Anderson team for putting this event on. Anderson team, stand up if you're here. Anderson team. Great job, great job. And I also, I want to say Sonya's over there. Whatever the crew that Sonya's here, I need you to bring that juice and that energy now too. Sonya, we're gonna recruit you for athletics. She's amazing. Even had the big heads. I saw that. I like the big heads, man. So let's jump in. Let's get started. Queens, New York. Growing up from Queens, New York. Oh, we got Queens in the house. All right. So tell me how a kid from Queens, New York ends up being connected to UCLA.
Well, it's a great place to start, but I also want to start by thanking you for being up here with me tonight. We've gotten to know each other pretty well over the last couple of years, and that word leadership, I am sitting next to a world-class leader. And I've had a chance to watch you with your coaches. It was fun to be part of that group. With the student athletes, how this man handles himself so gracefully with the media, the way you show up every day. But what stands out the most is I had a chance to watch you with your wife, Jessica, and your 3 girls, and to see you as a dad and a leader. You are just a great person to be in this role, and we are so proud to have you as the athletic director of UCLA. So let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you.
So let's go back actually in time.
Let's go back.
Because it's the only way for me to kind of tell this story. So, and for many of you, it'll be a time that you're just not familiar with. Because growing up as a kid in Queens, think about the late 60s, the early 70s. Well, there was no ESPN, no Fox Sports. Kevin Warren, there wasn't a Big Ten network.
Kevin Warren.
So if you were a sports fan, and I was as a kid, the way you connected with sports was reading Sports Illustrated and over time waiting for that college basketball game of the week. So as a kid, I grew up looking at Sports Illustrated, and it seemed like week after week during basketball season, what's on the cover? John Wooden and the UCLA Bruins. So I actually still have some of those great covers with Gail Goodrich and Walt Hazzard as they're winning those championships. And then this guy named Lou Alcindor shows up.
Yes.
So I'm a kid from New York. I'm going to a Catholic school. He's playing for this big Catholic high school powerhouse. And then he goes on to play for UCLA. And my first time ever seeing John Wooden's team play on TV brings me all the way back to 1968. And there was something called the game of the century. And it was UCLA against the Houston Cougars.
Yep.
Guy named Lou Alcindor against a guy named Elvin Hayes. Now, that night didn't work out the way we would have hoped. But from that moment on, I'm seeing Sports Illustrated. I'm watching this guy from New York City lead UCLA. And then all of a sudden, the game of the week starts showing up. And guess what? Back then, there's only one game. You want the best team to play. So as a kid, I grew up watching UCLA basketball and John Wooden. It was almost during the season, every Saturday, that one game seemed like it featured the Bruins. When I moved to LA to go to high school, it was really easy for me to say, all right, this is where I want to go. But it started as a little kid, reading Sports Illustrated, watching those games of the week, and year after year after year, just seeing the consistent success of John Wooden's program. So it's maybe a lifelong fan of the program, the school, of Anderson. So it's just such an amazing experience. For me to be sitting here tonight is unbelievable.
Oh, that's awesome. So you've got a big full-time job, right? Big job, and running one of the largest retailers in the world. How do you stay connected to UCLA? You talked a little bit about it, but what is it that UCLA gave to you that you still feel so connected and a Bruin through and through?
Yeah. You know, I wake up early every morning, and, you know, I try to stay connected to what's happening in the world, what's happening in retail, but I'm a diehard UCLA fan. So what's happening on campus, what's happening with the Anderson program, what's happening with athletics, it's just part of where I get my energy. So I always stay connected. You know how much I support what you're doing with the athletic program, and it's part of what keeps me focused and energized, and it's a little break from my 70-hour-a-week job. It's that little pleasure I get from staying connected to this great university.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if it's 70 hours. I don't know about that. But let's talk about Coach. The leadership, the lessons, the values. There's a through line with some of the things you already said when you were standing up here. You're very humble. Your humility. I've talked to some of your teammates at Target. They talk about that you live and breathe your culture, that you're a living embodiment of it. Talk about the leadership and the values and Coach and how you apply that to what you do.
Yeah. So when I think about Coach Wooden, the first thing that comes to mind for me is consistency. And that focus on his core values, his guiding principles, some of the things that were so important, the fundamentals, those details were so critically important for him. And I think there's a lot of parallels to leadership in business. And I think it's really important for me to show up consistently every day. And while the world may be changing and there may be different challenges in front of us, never losing focus on the importance of your values, your purpose, your principles. I think that's so important, and I think about that every day. I also think back to the Wooden legacy and how his teams performed year after year. You know this from your current role. In college basketball, the team changes all the time.
All the time.
Kids graduate. A lot of his players went on to the NBA. Some of his coaches went on to bigger roles. Yep. But he always adapted, and he always started with values and principles and purpose, and he built such an amazing culture that it just transcended the program for years and years. Mm-hmm. And I think for business leaders, there's just so much to learn from that. And his tactics might have changed when he had a different set of players on the team, but his focus on principles and purpose and values, that consistent approach and that culture he created, I just think it's a hallmark of great leadership that can transcend beyond sports into the business world and beyond.
So you've had a great career, unbelievable, still going. I mean, you got to be a bad man if they change the retirement age so you can stay longer. That's a bad boy right there. So talk to us about some leadership, some real life and experience, good, bad, something that you've learned or something that occurred to you that was critical as your ascension up to the CEO role.
Yeah. I think one of the things, Martin, I've learned, one, is always the importance of taking the time to listen. And listen to your teams, listen to the consumer, the customer you serve, listen to what's happening around you, and kind of embrace some of the feedback. Sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's a call to action. And throughout my career, I've had to make some tough decisions, and they haven't always been easy. I've got members of our Target team here tonight, and they know, well, we've had an amazing run. And I can sit here and talk about what it's like to run a $100 billion company, and the fact that since I joined 9 years ago, we've added $40 billion of growth. We've seen our company make big investments in capabilities, big investments in the team. And we've also had to pause at times and say, you know what? We've got to make a really tough choice. I had been here for only a few months, and we had a business in Canada that we had entered into a few years before I arrived. And I realized that it was failing. Despite some of our best efforts, we weren't delivering the results we needed.
It was a big investment.
Big investment. We made a multi-billion-dollar investment. But I realized if we didn't decide to make a bold change and exit that market and put all of our focus on the US, we were putting the entire enterprise at jeopardy. And that was hard. We had invested billions of dollars. We had close to 20,000 team members up there. We had opened up over 100 stores and built distribution centers. And I had to walk into a boardroom and say, guess what? I'm going to recommend that we shut things down. We double down on the US. We bring back all the talent from Canada to the US business. And we make sure that we stay really focused on our core business. Those were hard decisions, but it was the right thing for the company. It was the right thing for our team. It was the right thing for our shareholders. But I lost a lot of sleep.
Painful.
And it was really painful. But sometimes, those tough decisions, they don't get better over time. And I could have waited another year or 2 years, but sometimes you just got to take it on and have the courage and confidence and alignment of your team to say, we're going to deal with challenging issues. At the same time, we're going to celebrate all the things we're doing well.
Now you got to write some of the students in here, tough decisions, right there what you just said, they don't get better with time. You got to address it head on, even though it's painful. So talk to us about something that's a challenge, something that really worked out well from a leadership perspective that you've done or your team has done, and talk about that a little bit.
Well, as you and I have gotten to know each other, I'm big on the word team.
Yep.
And you and I have talked about the fact that when I look at great leadership and great teams, one of the things I listen for is the pronouns that the teams use. And when I hear someone say, this is Brian's idea, and I'm doing it because Martin said I should, I know the chance of success is pretty limited.
Yep.
But when I see the pronouns change and people say, here's what we're going to do, and here's what our plan is, and here's what we're committed to, amazing things start to happen. And that's where a company like Target has been so successful, because it is a team environment. And it's not one person, it's not me making the decisions, it's a team coming together and saying, all right, here's what's right for the company, what's right for the brand, what's right for our team and our guests, and ultimately that's the right thing for our shareholders. But getting those pronouns right is critically important. And I've seen it again and again in my career. When teams are galvanized and they all feel like they're part of it and they've made a commitment and it's their decision, that's when you start driving great results. And I think that happens on the playing field and in the boardroom, and that's what's, to me, is so special about getting those pronouns to change, because that's where you build alignment and great results.
Speaking of that, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's a big hot topic throughout the world, something that a lot of companies strive to improve. Some do great, some don't. Target is known for your diversity, equity, and inclusive things that you have done. Can you talk a little bit about that, why that's important to you, why that's important to Target?
Yeah. I mean, it probably stems from how I grew up, where I grew up in Queens, New York, my time in Los Angeles, in diverse environments. Some of the individuals that have influenced my career, I mean, I've worked for some amazing female leaders. You know, I grew up in a pretty challenging environment, and you know, my mom played a pretty important role there. And I've always appreciated the importance of diversity and inclusion. But what I've also learned throughout my career is, you know, for an organization like ours that is so consumer facing, I mean, we have millions and millions of guests in our stores every week. We're a better company when our team reflects the consumer and the guests we serve. And we made it a priority, starting at the very top. I mean, over 50% of our board of directors would identify as diverse or female.
Over 50%?
Over 50%. 38% are diverse, 38% are female, 15% are black directors, something that very few other companies can say today. Of my direct reports, half are women. And think about who shops in our stores. They reflect the consumer we serve. Of our 2,000 stores across the country, half are led by women, over a third diverse leaders.
Wow.
So it permeates our entire organization, but it makes us a better company because from the very top, we reflect the guest and the consumer we serve, and it's made us a better company. So it's been a lifelong area of focus for me, and while we've made some great strides, I also know we can do better, and we will.
That's so cool. You're so right about women shopping in the store. I know my wife spends so much time in Target.
That's what I heard.
We have one like retail credit card, and it's a Target credit card. I never use mine. I just go in and just do the Apple Pay. But that's really cool. That's really impressive. Just staying on the team. The thing that I love about Brian, and there's so many things I love about you, Brian. Okay, this is, but your energy and your enthusiasm is something that hits people right off. I mean, when I first met you, it's just there's an energy that you have that people want to be a part of. Talk to me, where does that come from? No matter what the situation is. As a matter of fact, I met you really when I asked you to talk to our whole athletic department during COVID to be a guest speaker on Zoom for 275 people for 15 or 20 minutes. And just to talk about what you're doing at Target and your energy and your enthusiasm, your positivity, that just lifted everybody up. So where does that come from? How do you do that?
Well, you and I have had this conversation, and you've got a lot of positive energy that you bring each and every day as well.
I know, wow.
But you know, I think it comes with a leadership role like yours and mine, where I wake up every day and say, all right, I don't get a chance to have a bad day. I've got to bring my best self to my business, to my team, to my family, to everything I touch. And I've always focused on, bringing that great positive energy. I've been a zealot of something called a corporate athlete program. And I spent a lot of time over the last 20 years with this group out of Orlando that runs something called the Human Performance Institute. And they focus on how do they take the two of us and make sure we're approaching our work like elite athletes are training to be on the playing field.
Wow.
So how do you invest in the right amount of rest, in the right nutrition, in making sure, you're exercising and doing the things to manage, your personal energy, so that if I'm up on stage with you tonight, I'm bringing my very best. And I do that by making sure I work out every day. I try to make sure I get, the rest I need. I try to eat well. But I try to make sure I'm training so that I can bring my very best when I need it in the business world And on those big moments, like you, I want to bring that positive energy to everything I do to make sure my teams know they can count on me each and every day.
Doesn't that sound like competitive greatness? Sounds like competitive greatness. So let's talk about UCLA. You're at UCLA. Actually, I want you to tell this story because we've shared this story. Were you always going to go into retail leaving UCLA? What were you thinking about doing when you were a student?
Yeah. So when I was on campus as an undergrad, I was kind of going into that last year, and I actually had kind of 3 different paths I was evaluating.
Okay.
I thought about going to law school. I thought about business, but I thought about coaching and teaching. And I wasn't quite sure which one was right for me, but I kept leaning towards the passion I had for coaching and teaching. And last few years on campus, I worked in retail and I coached high school football, not far from here. And one day after practice, the head coach pulled me aside. He knew I was getting close to graduating. And he said, "Brian, what do you think about doing?" And I kind of took him through the choices, but I said, his name was Bill Wild. I said, "Bill, I think coaching is really the right thing for me." Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and he said, "Brian, do you like to paint?" I said, "We're talking about teaching and coaching." He said, "What about laying carpet?" I said, "Bill, what are you talking about?" He said, "Well, for high school coaches like us and teachers, we almost all have a second job." And you and I have talked about the fact I grew up in a pretty tough environment and didn't have a lot of money. And I had mowed a lot of lawns and shoveled a lot of snow and washed trucks and did a lot of things. I said, "Well, I don't know if I want a part-time job to supplement my full-time job." Mm-hmm. And I said, maybe business is the right thing for me to do. And fortunately, I ended up being a coach. I never imagined I'd have a $100 billion company to run with 400,000 team members and get a chance to impact so many lives. But I ended up coaching. And that's how I kind of approach what I do. I get to coach an amazing team of leaders, an extraordinary brand that touches so many lives across the country. But ultimately, I did become a coach. It's just a very different playing field than I thought I was going to be on.
That's awesome. You made the right decision, by the way. Totally made the right decision. Yes. So you mentioned your mother and the impact and the role that she had. Can you talk a little bit about that? We all have people that are our champions. We all have people that we need to believe in us. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, you and I have talked about how we grew up. And I think we both reflected on, for the two of us, you never forget where you came from.
Right.
And if I think about kind of the early years of my life, I realized pretty quickly that, I had some challenges versus many of my peers. I went to a great Catholic school in Whitestone, New York. So if you've been in New York, you probably have seen the bridge out there, not far from that bridge. And I might have been, Martin, in 2nd or 3rd grade. And it's kind of that first day of school, and you got this little card that updates your address and your phone number, key contacts. And I'll always remember handing that to the administrator. And she looked at it and she tapped her colleague and said, "There's something missing here." And the woman knew who I was and said, "Well, Brian's from a single parent household," which was code for he doesn't have a dad. That's why only his mom's name is there. And I'll remember that forever because it made me realize that, all right, I've got some challenges I've got to embrace. I can either feel sorry for myself when I got off the school bus and nobody was there, or I was playing a sport and I didn't have family in the stands because my mom played a huge role in my life, but she also had a major medical issue, had heart issues her entire life. So she wasn't in the stands, she wasn't there when I came home. So I had to grow up really fast. And I learned for me early on in life that there were only 3 areas where the playing field was level: in school, in sports, and at work. Because in the classroom, nobody cared that I didn't have a dad, or I didn't have a lot of money. They didn't care where I lived. As long as you performed well, that's all that mattered. In sports, if you played well, if you showed up every day and did your best, well, you're still on the field or the court the next week. And at work, as long as you performed, well, you were recognized. And I embraced that early on. And my mom, my grandparents played a big role in supporting that. But I recognized I've got to embrace education and perform in the classroom. I'm going to give it my all in sports. And at work, I'm going to do the very best I can. So I embraced those things early on. And while it wasn't easy, it gave me probably 2 gifts that I've held on to my entire life. One is the gift of humility, and the other is the gift of empathy. And I think it's made me a better person, a better leader. But you never forget where you came from.
That's right.
And I know that as a young kid in Queens, New York, nobody ever said, Brian Cornell is going to run one of the 30 largest companies in the United States. Nobody ever said, I'd be sitting on stage tonight with you. But
that's true. No one thought that.
Yeah. But
no one thought that.
I embraced the importance of education, sports, working hard, those core values. And my mom, my grandparents, they played a big part in just reinforcing that and telling me, you can accomplish whatever you want.
So we got a lot of students in the house. If you're a student, stand up. I want to see the students stand up. Students in the house. I think you all know this, but you're getting a master class right now, right? So Brian, I want to ask all these students right here that are standing up, give us a piece of advice. You were in their shoes, you're a Bruin, leadership, whatever it is, for them.
Yeah. So I had the privilege of spending time with some of the Anderson students earlier today. I mean, this has been a fabulous day for me. Being back on campus, being with so many students, and that question was thrown my way. And for those that are thinking about your career, I've got to tell you, it's important to make sure you focus on things like strategy and building capabilities and making sure you surround yourself with great talent. But one of the things you and I have talked about over the last few years, and I know you have a passion for it, is recognizing how important culture is in your success, in your team's success, in your company's success. When I think about lessons learned for me and that amazing Target team that's in this room with me tonight from the last few years of the pandemic, we had a strategy that guided us. We had built great capabilities. We had an incredibly talented team. But our success, and we added almost $30 billion of growth during the pandemic, it all came down to culture. And when we talk about culture at Target, we talk about 3 things. We talk about care, we talk about growth, and we talk about winning together. And the care component is caring for each other, caring for your team, caring for the guests we serve, and caring for communities. I actually saw that culture come to life during the Christmas holiday. A few of you may have seen the headline story, but it was raining here in California. It was snowing a lot in Buffalo, New York. And on Christmas Eve, as we were getting ready to shut down because of this incredible snowstorm, our store director realized, all right, I've got team members that might not get home safe today. We still had people doing last-minute Christmas shopping, And then we had people knocking on the door saying, will you let me in? I need to take shelter. It's a blizzard outside, I can't see. So that culture of care empowered that store director to say, come on in, let's fire up some coffee and hot chocolate, let's get sleeping bags and mattresses on the floor,
Wow.
Make yourself at home. And our team and that store director took care of close to 40 people on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Wow.
And to me, that's our culture of care coming to life. Wow. But, you know, growth is important, not just top line growth, but investing in individual growth and development is critically important to what we consider our culture. And then back to, you win as one team. And during the pandemic, I saw our company come together in a way I've never seen before, where even on those Zoom screens, I couldn't tell if someone was in supply chain or store operations, if they were in marketing or merchandising, finance. It was a one team approach. And that to me is just so powerful. But you've got to be great students of strategy and build great capabilities and surround yourself with talent. But I think successful leaders and companies in the future, they're going to embrace the importance of building a great culture. And I think it's just a differentiator as you go forward.
Brian Cornell, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, man. This is awesome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you, for this great conversation. Brian, I think it's evident, if it wasn't obvious to everyone, that you're such a worthy honoree. We're so proud of you. You're a tremendous Bruin. You embody all the wonderful qualities that Coach Wooden preached about throughout his really incredibly impactful life. So it's my honor, on behalf of UCLA Anderson, the Wooden family, to present you with the 2022 John Wooden Global Leadership Award.